Okay, welcome back for another video. This video is going to demonstrate how to set your lathe operation defaults. Okay, so we already have a video that shows how to do the mill. I'm just going to do the lathe. It's the same process. So if you feel like you have the mill pretty well in hand, you probably don't really need to watch this. I would actually encourage you to try it and see if you can figure it out before watching this, and then if you run into some issues, come back to this video and take a look and see if you've done everything correctly. I find that sometimes doing those things on your own tend to stay in your memory a little better if if you give it a shot and you kind of learn on your own. Next thing how we're going to start here, I should say, is we're going to start by picking a machine. So I'm just going to pick a lathe. It doesn't really matter which lathe you pick. I always pick the Haas, but you can pick any lathe. It's going to set your defaults for all of them. Then I'm going to go to Machine, and I'm going to go to Control Definition. And it's going to bring up this dialog box. In this dialog box, we have Operation Defaults down here. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. And you can see here I have all of my lathe operations, which is not nearly as many as our mill. 3D high-speed toolpaths, we're probably not going to use those very often in the lathe, so I don't think we really need to set those. The ones that I'm worried about are probably just my turning toolpaths. I don't really use my quick toolpaths enough. My can toolpaths, I'll set those as well, and maybe my C-axis as well. So let's go ahead and first let's start with the properties, as usual. Do I want to comment in here now? I'm not going to put a standard comment at the moment. Program number, sure. Let's put 2500. That's generally what I use. Feed calculation from tool. I recommend leaving this on from tool. That allows you to basically allows you to create special tools for certain inserts that you're going to use, depending on the brand of insert, the grade of insert. That changes the speeds and feeds of the insert. So you can create tools for those specific inserts. If you just go from material, then it's going to pull it from material, and it's going to be harder to get the correct speeds and feeds for specific inserts. You're going to have to change them each time. So I'm going to go from tool, and then I'm also going to show you how to edit those tools and get those to basically to get your speeds and feeds correct. So you can just select the tool and you don't have to change them each time. And I'll show you that in a different video. Okay, so we're going to keep that from tool. We're going to assign a tool number sequentially. This really is not a big deal in the lathe because chances are you're probably going to change them when you get out in the machine anyway. You're going to run into clearance issues where you have to space out drills across the other side of the turret from maybe a turning tool just because you don't want it to hit the chuck, or maybe you have a really long drill, you don't want it to hit the backside of the lathe behind the chuck there. So there's a lot of reasons why you're going to change those, but I had to put them assigned sequentially just so they're in order. I like a little bit of order. So that's just a preference that I have. You don't really need to have that since you're probably going to change them at the machine. Whatever you cut most is probably the best thing to select for your material because then you have to change it the least amount of times. I would say that we probably cut in the shop, we probably cut steel the most. However, I record videos and do demonstrations with Mastercam the most, which usually the tutorials and the exercises, generally speaking, they're in aluminum. So I'm going to change this to aluminum. Plus, this gives me an opportunity to show you how to change it. So I'm going to go ahead and hit select. I'll right-click in here, and I'll hit Get from Library. And I'm going to use 6061. Select it, and there we go. So now it's just using 6061 aluminum. So it'll default to that each time. Stock setup. I am actually going to create a stock setup, so I'm going to put this on the DZ plane so that it defaults to that. Operations will update and match the stock view. Yes. Okay. So DZ top, and I'm actually going to create a standard stock size of 2 inches OD, 4-inch length. I'm going to turn my margins on, and I'm going to put a 0.01 in this margin, and I'm going to put a 2.0 in that margin. I'm actually going to make this 3.0. And that will be my standard stock. And then I'll just come in and I'll actually edit this as I need. So I'm going to hit check. And I'm going to hit check. I'm not going to turn my jaws on. Like, as I've said in past videos, or in many of my videos, I don't really use them very often. They don't really show you much. I only use them if I'm really in a situation where I'm cutting close to the jaw. Maybe I want to make sure that it's that it's going to be cutting correctly. I'm not going to run into and hit anything. So I'm going to leave them off. So I'm going to hit check. All right. So I set that up. That looks good. Now let's go into my turning tool paths. So my face path, select my parameters here. Entry amount 0.1, I like that. I am going to keep that on. I very rarely rough, so I'm not going to keep that on. Finish step over, I'm really not going to use any finish passes here. So this, as long as this, I'm going to make this 0.2, oops, 0.02. That way, as long as I always have my stock so that I have less than 0.02 sticking out from Z0, it'll only take one pass. I don't want it roughing this. So that'll be fine. Overcut amount, do I want to overcut? Yeah, I'm actually going to turn this on. I'm going to overcut 50 thousandths. That way I know I'm going past whatever my tool nose radius is. If I don't go past my radius, I'm going to leave a little nipple on the front of there. Retract amount, okay, so it's going to come out 0.1, that's fine. Stock to leave, no, I'm not leaving anything on a regular basis. Everything else here looks good. I'm not going to use any of this stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and hit check. Okay, I like where that one is. All right, so lathe point. I'm not even going to select that one because I don't use that one very often. The lathe rough, I definitely use pretty often. So let's go into that one. Okay, so we want to overlap on equal steps. I talk about this in some other videos. Basically, this just means that it is going to create equal size steps. So if whatever I'm taking off, whatever I need to take off of this diameter, if it is not evenly divisible by whatever my depth of cut is, it will take that amount, divide it by how many ever cuts. Basically, it'll create equal amounts. So it won't take 0.1, it might take 0.088 or something like that, so that all the steps are equal. And that's okay. I like that. So I'm going to leave that on. 0.1 is a good, roughing amount. I could maybe increase that if I wanted to, but I'm going to leave it at 0.1, and I'll just increase it, on a per operation basis. This minimum cut, I want to make this 0.02. I really like to cut a little more than 1,000, so I don't want it. I want my minimum cut to be a little bit more than that. So these tools, these roughing tools, are designed to cut a little bit more stock. They're not designed to cut, 1,000th of an inch off. My stock to leave in the X is good. My stock to leave in the Z, I want that to be 0.005. My entry amount is 0.1 away. That's good. My exit amount, I'm okay with that just being 0. My computer compensation, I'm going to leave this on. Generally, I like to use control when I'm actually making something on the machine. But I do a lot of videos for Mastercam, like this one, and this allows me to simulate the part correctly. So it actually follows the simulation. When you put control on, it doesn't show it the way that it's actually going to be created with the correct tool nose radius being compensated for. So I'm going to leave this on computer, and then I can change that if I'm actually making a part out on the machine. Lead in, lead out. So let's take a look in there. So I generally don't increase or extend my contour on the lead in. Lead in is usually this direction. My lead out, usually that direction, but I do generally extend the contour 0.15. So I'm going to put that in there and hit check. My plunge parameters, I'm just going to leave these as is. I will change them, like again, on a per operation basis if I need to plunge. Okay, the other thing is I always want use stock for outer boundary on, and I'm going to hit check. Okay, so that one is set. Let's go in and do the same thing for this one. So we're going to lead and lead out. We're going to extend this 0.15. Oops. 0.15. Check. Finish step over. 0.1, that's fine. Nothing to leave. Computer's on. I'm going to add a corner break on here. I'm going to leave that 0.05 on there. So I'm going to go ahead and hit check. And I believe everything on there looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and hit check. Okay. My drill. Let's take a look at this. Depth, we're going to make those absolute. Clearance is going to be absolute. I'm going to turn the clearance off and just have a retract plane. Drill tip compensation we'll leave off. Everything there looks good. Yeah, so we're going to leave it like that. Okay, lathe thread. So I don't use this in quite as much. Obviously, this stuff is going to need to be changed on a per operation basis. So a lot of these things here I don't really have. Yeah, it's not a lot of stuff I can really add here. So I'm going to just X out of that. I'm not going to change anything in that one. The groove I use pretty decently. The only things I really change in that are use stock as outer boundary. And all this stuff I have 5 on and 5 on. That all looks good. And then everything here looks good as well. So everything here looks good. So I'm going to hit check. Lathe cutoff. All right, so here I do have some stuff. I want to change that to from stock. And I am going to default a chamfer on here. And I'm going to put a clearance cut. First, we're going to do the parameters. Chamfer width, we're going to make that 10 thousandths. And the clearance cut, we're going to make that 0 from stock and hit check. Okay, and that looks pretty good. So I'm going to hit check. Okay. So I think everything here looks pretty good. I don't use these very often. Plunge turn, yeah, I don't hardly ever use those. So I'm not going to bother setting them. The quick turn, I don't really use those either, so I'm not going to set those. The can turning, I actually like using those a lot, so we are going to set those. So let's go ahead and set my can turning. Lathe pattern repeat, I don't use that one, so we're going to close that one. Lathe can rough and lathe can finish, those are the two that I use. So I'm going to go ahead and change those. Okay, so in this can rough, we're going to leave 10 or 5 thousandths on. Whoops, 0.5. In the Z, our rough depth would be 0.1. Everything here looks pretty good. Clearance 0.05. X clearance 0.02. I'm just putting some clearances from its start for its start point. Everything else here looks pretty good. We are going to not extend that contour, but we are going to extend the lead out. And we're going to make that 0.15 as we did with the other rough. And that looks pretty good. And I'm going to turn extend contour to stock. Actually, check that. I'm not going to turn that on. I'm going to leave that off. Everything there looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and hit check. And do the same thing with the finish. 0. Actually, yeah, everything there looks good. Okay. And C-axis toolpaths. Face contour. Nah, I'm just going to leave these as is because they would change on a regular basis. So that's it. That's all I'm really going to change in there. Those are the ones that I use the most. So I'm going to go ahead and hit check. And, oh, hold on. Shoot, I didn't save. I didn't hit save. Yes. Okay, so I accidentally didn't hit save right here before I ended. So in 2021, it will not save them. Oh, it did pick it up. Okay, so it did save this one. So I've done some other ones where it did not save my changes. And that's what I was concerned about just now. So it looks like it did actually save them. So let's just double check. Okay, yes, it does save them. All right, so we did get them saved. So save default settings, check, yes. All right. Okay, so we should be able to go ahead and create a toolpath. So let's just create 0, 0. Just create a random part here. All right. Actually, better yet, let's do new. Don't save. And let's bring in a machine. Okay, so let's take a look and see if our... Yeah, so some of our stuff did not save here. It stayed saved in the last one, but it did not save to this one, I don't believe. Well, it still says it does. So let's try and create something. 0, 0. All right. Let's set up some stock. Okay, so it didn't keep my stock set up. Okay, check. Check. All right. Let's go ahead and go to turning. Rough. I usually would face this, but I'm really more interested in seeing. Oh. I didn't go to my DZ plane. Equals. Toolpath. Now let's try that again. Check. Okay. All right, so you can see here all my settings are in there already for me. So use stock as outer boundary, bam, it's done. So it makes it so much easier. Really all I did was click on this. I can click on finish, last, check. Everything's set the way that I want it. I have a corner break in there, check. And it does everything that I wanted to do. It's even going past the stock a little bit for me. So it saves me a lot of time. So I highly recommend setting those operation defaults. It was just a little goofy there because I've had some times where I've set it and I forgot to hit that save button and it wiped them out. But it looks like that is fixed. Or maybe I just did something wrong a couple of those times. But anyway, that looks pretty good. So in future videos, you'll notice that I probably won't be changing too much stuff. You'll see where that cuts in terms of your tutorials and exercises because I now have these set up. All right, at any rate, if you have any questions, you can feel free to see me during my office hours, or of course you can see me during class.